They say the fall doesn't kill you. It's the sudden stop. The silence after the scream. The moment where the world forgets you're still alive. On December 24, 1971, the sky over Peru looked calm, almost innocent. At Jorge Chávez International Airport in Lima, families hurried to make final flights home for the holidays. Among them was a 17-year-old girl with round glasses and a quiet demeanor. Her name was Julianne Kopka, and she was boarding Lanza Flight 508 with her mother, Maria. Julianne didn't want to be on that flight. Not because she feared flying, but because her instincts whispered that something was wrong. She and her mother had tried to rebook for an earlier date. But December flights were packed. This was the only one left. A 60-minute jump from Lima to Pucallpa to reunite with Julianne's father, Hans Wilhelm, a respected German zoologist working deep in the Amazon rainforest. Julianne had spent her childhood between two worlds, European science and the heart of the jungle. Her parents raised her at a remote research station, the Panguana Ecological Reserve, where she had learned to identify venomous snakes, recognize dangerous animals, and find edible plants in the dense green unknown. She had once held baby sloths and watched leafcutter ants march in military precision. But all of that seemed distant now, as she tightened her seatbelt inside a plane full of 92 people, including crew and holiday passengers. As the plane climbed into the atmosphere, Julianne leaned against the window, staring at the clouds below. Somewhere in her chest, that whisper of dread hadn't faded. 30 minutes into the flight, it began. First came turbulence, mild at first, then sharp. Then the plane jerked violently to the left. Luggage overhead shifted. Screams echoed. And outside the windows, the clouds had turned black. The Lockheed Electra had flown directly into a thunderstorm. Lightning lit up the sky in violent flashes. Rain hammered the fuselage like fists from the gods. Passengers clutched armrests. Others began to pray. Then came the flash. A searing white bolt struck the right wing. It exploded into fire. The plane lurched. A section tore off. Debris sprayed into the cabin. Julianne's ears rang as the aircraft began to disintegrate around her. The last thing she remembered was her mother's voice, calm but panicked, saying, "Now it's all over." And then, silence. Julianne fell. 2 miles above the earth, still buckled into her row of seats, Julianne plummeted through the sky. But she didn't feel like she was falling. Not exactly. Everything had gone quiet, eerily quiet. Wind rushed past her ears, but she couldn't scream. The jungle canopy rose to meet her, stretching for miles in every direction. Her vision tunneled. Her world narrowed. And then, impact. She hit the ground. And somehow, impossibly, she lived. When Julianne awoke, it was daylight. Birdsong chirped overhead. She was lying on the forest floor, surrounded by leaves, branches, and silence. At first, she couldn't move. Her body was broken, fractured collarbone, swollen eye, deep cuts across her legs and arms. Her glasses were gone. One shoe remained. She had no supplies. No food. No map. No way of knowing where she was. What she did have was knowledge. Julianne was no ordinary teenager. She had spent years learning survival from parents who believed the best education was hands-on and unforgiving. While most city kids were navigating sidewalks, she had been trekking barefoot through vines. Her jungle training would now be the only reason she had a chance. She began to assess her injuries. One eye was completely swollen shut. Her collarbone was broken, making arm movement painful. But there was no major internal bleeding, and her legs could carry weight. Around her, bits of the plane's wreckage lay scattered. A seat here. A shoe there. Corpses nowhere in sight. She called for her mother. Again and again. But the only answer was the hum of insects and the shifting leaves above. Julianne knew she had survived the fall. But that didn't mean she'd lied. The Amazon rainforest is one of the deadliest environments on Earth. Predators, parasites, venom, disease. And the worst threat of all, being lost. She remembered her father's advice: if you're ever lost in the jungle, find a stream. Follow it. It will lead to a river. And rivers lead to people. So she began walking. Slowly. Stumbling. Following the faint trickle of water downhill. Her one shoe became her measuring tool. She used it to test the ground ahead. In the Amazon, stepping in the wrong place could mean a snake bite, or sinking into swamp, or getting stung by venomous ants. She didn't want to end like that. The pain from her wounds grew worse. One gash in her right arm began to fester. Insects laid eggs inside it. She could feel them wriggling under her skin. Her food? A single bag of candy she'd found near the wreck. It lasted maybe 2 days. At night, she huddled under leaves or inside hollow trees, hoping jaguars or wild boars wouldn't smell her blood. Rain soaked her. Mosquitoes feasted on her. But she kept walking. On the 4th day, Julianne heard a low drone overhead. A rescue plane. She stumbled into a clearing and waved her arms. Screamed. But the plane flew past, unaware. That night, she almost gave up. But then she remembered her parents. Her father was probably out there, searching. And if she didn't keep going, if she gave in to the jungle, it would have all been for nothing. By the 7th day, she could barely stand. Her wounds were crawling with maggots. Her skin was sunburned, blistered. She drank river water, sometimes dirty, because there was no choice. She passed bodies from the crash, still strapped in their seats. Some torn apart. Some decayed beyond recognition. She held her breath and kept walking. And then, on the 10th day, salvation. She spotted a small shack. A fisherman's hut, empty, but real. Nearby, a canoe. Inside the hut, a bottle of gasoline. Julianne knew what to do. She poured gasoline over the infected wound on her arm. The pain was immediate, burning, excruciating. But the gasoline killed the maggots. She passed out from the pain. Later, she awoke to the sound of voices. Lumbermen. 3 men had returned to the shack. At first, they thought she was a forest spirit. A ghost. But when she spoke in Spanish and explained her story, they realized who she was. Julianne Kopka. The girl who had vanished in the jungle. The miracle survivor of Lanza Flight 508. They treated her wounds. Fed her. Then transported her by canoe to a nearby village, and from there, to a hospital. When news broke that she had survived, the world was stunned. Of the 92 people on board, Julianne had been the only one to walk away. Not just from a crash, but from 10 days in the Amazon, alone, injured, and barefoot. Her story became legend. She was called the Miracle Girl, the Jungle Survivor, and the girl who fell from the sky. But Julianne didn't want fame. She didn't want headlines. She wanted answers. What happened to her mother? Why had the plane flown through a thunderstorm? And why had Lanza, a company already known for safety issues, even been allowed to fly? In time, she learned the truth. Her mother had survived the crash, but only for a few hours. Her injuries had been too severe. The airline, Lanza, was shut down soon after. The crash had been the final blow to its credibility. But the scars it left never healed. Julianne, though, endured. She returned to the jungle years later, not as a victim, but as a scientist. She studied biology. She wrote a book. She became a symbol of resilience. In interviews, she rarely dramatized her survival. She spoke plainly, even clinically. But the strength behind her words was unmistakable. She was not just a survivor. She was a witness to nature's fury, to the frailty of life, and to the boundless capacity of the human will. If you've ever doubted your ability to overcome, if you've ever felt lost, abandoned, or broken, remember Julianne Kopka. A teenage girl who fell from the sky and walked out of hell. If this story shook you, if it made your heart pound or your jaw drop, smash that like button and subscribe to Lore of the Multiverse. These aren't just stories. These are the human extremes, what we endure, what we survive, and what we learn when there's no one left to help. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes, the most extraordinary journeys begin with a fall.